Hello everyone, welcome again to Advocacy Talks for 2022. These talks bring people together to listen to ideas of interest for people who are blind or low vision around the country and around the world. We're starting off 2022 meeting two people who are blind and vision impaired and have joined NCBI's Advocacy Network. To build groups of people around the country coming together for empowerment and change. So listen to their stories today. Let me introduce to you Cameron Relihan and Sarah Harrington. And we'll be asking Cameron and Sarah a couple of questions today. If you have any questions yourself, please put them in the chat session and we'll ask Cameron and Sarah at the end of their talk. The talk will last approximately 45 minutes. Also, if anyone is interested in joining the networks that you're about to hear about, please email us at campaigns@ncbi.ie and we'll send you lots of information. You'd be most welcome to join if you are blind or have low vision. So, Cameron, let's start with you today.
Perfect.
We'd love to hear about who you are, a little bit about you, whatever you'd like to tell us about yourself. What enticed you to join NCBI's Advocacy Network and what you've got out of it so far?
Okay, I'll just give a little mini introduction first. My name is Cameron Relihan. I'm 19. I'm in UL. I study law and psychology, and I live in Clare. I joined the local Advocacy Network because I just, oh Jesus, sorry. I just did my leaving cert in June of this year. And while I was doing it, I was obviously doing an awful lot of study and an awful lot of, extracurriculars that I normally upkept, went to the side. So kind of come the summertime, I wanted to kind of broaden my horizons and kind of meet new people and just kind of fill up my time, I suppose, with things that I actually felt I enjoyed and were worthwhile. And being a part of the NCBI, from a more behind the scenes perspective, was definitely one of my goals. So that was my big pull towards. And for specifically being a part of the local advocacy network, it was just the one that kind of meshed best with me after kind of trying out different, avenues and different ways of being a part of this community. From a more, as I say, behind the scenes level, the advocacy network was just the one that best suited me, and I maintained that the most. And I've learned an awful lot being a part of the local advocacy network. For me, my vision is more, I mean, I am visually impaired, but in the sense that I can amalgamate myself into society in a way that, like, say, my vision impairment doesn't impede my day-to-day life in the sense that it may with someone with poorer vision than me. So to hear stories and to hear perspectives from people who have poorer vision than I do and whose vision infiltrates into more avenues of their lifestyle in ways that mine does and in ways that mine doesn't, it really, opened my eyes and my perspective into, what it's like for people living with poorer vision than me, and kind of struggles that, say, don't affect me individually, maybe not necessarily to a vision, but just given, certain lifestyles or, say the use of public transportation more frequently than me or something like that, that it has really kind of opened up my horizons, and I'm very grateful, and that's why I've stayed.
So it sounds like belonging to this group has broadened your perspectives on other people's vision impairments, the broad range of vision impairments.
100%, yeah.
What has that? What do you think? What has that taught you about the variance in vision impairments? What have you learned from that, Cameron, about how perhaps our society might not quite understand the total variance of vision impairment?
100%. I think that there's a huge dearth in knowledge broadly, I mean, for me, as someone who is visually impaired, there was a lack of knowledge in the experiences of other visually impaired people. So even to pull back and look at it from a perspective of people in general who don't suffer from vision impairments, I definitely think that there is an absence of awareness, and varying experiences and varying, levels of course, is a spectrum. But in also, I think what something that people don't recognize is that not only is being visually impaired on a spectrum, but so are the way that it affects your lifestyle. But at the same time, there's also a huge level of uniformity in struggles, and whether you're someone, say, like me, who would be poor vision, or if you're blackout blind, there are an awful lot of common threads that are unique to people who are visually impaired or people on the disabled spectrum as a whole, that no matter where you land, you experience more or less the same, like social treatment and stuff like that. So I think it's definitely broadened my horizons and has made me more aware of similarities and differences in varying degrees of vision.
And that's great, thank you. And what would you say coming together in a group, the benefits are of coming together in a group rather than trying to tackle some of these challenges individually might be?
Oh, I think it has an unspeakable effect. I mean, like, one only needs to look at statistics to see how, mental health issues are really a huge issue for people of all disabilities, but for sure people on the visually impaired and blind spectrum. And I think sharing our struggles and, even if it's not something that I directly relate to, but even just being reminded that there's other people out there who, experience similar struggles as I do, and I'm sure that feeling is universal, is just a huge alleviator of, say, loneliness or, social isolation, or feeling ostracized, that you inherently feel as a visually impaired or blind person, even if you're surrounded by the most loving, supportive group of family and friends. Unless there isn't someone, if there isn't someone in your, immediate real life who is also in a similar boat to you in terms of visually impaired, or even, even if you don't know someone who's disabled, in general, it can definitely, make you feel a bit like an island, I suppose, and just having that communal discussion on what issues are pressing you and the community as a whole, I think it definitely has really, and it also obviously, there's countless expressions about, a group it's easier to fight something as a whole than singularly, but I think even from a mental health standpoint, you could totally make the claim that it has, unspeakable benefits, really.
So the breaking down isolation for people, even when they are surrounded by family, to belong to a group of people who have some similar challenges and taking on those challenges together. Can you mention one or two of those collective challenges that your group may have taken on? Maybe looking.
Sure. We were focusing on low floor buses a few months back. I was writing an awful lot of emails for that, and libraries and issues with people being, font size and books and braille and, accessibility for libraries, are two examples of issues that, my specific local advocacy network has tackled as of late.
And of course, those issues are not just unique to your locality or your group. They're going to, the outcomes of those are going to benefit people who are blind or vision impaired across Ireland. So some great work being done in there. Can I ask you, while I've got you, Cameron, the second question before I move on to Sarah, about what would you say to somebody who is tentatively thinking of joining one of these local advocacy networks? It might be a bit hesitant about jumping out into the space from having the privacy of having a vision impairment and jumping into a group of people?
I would say, think about it, you know, like I wouldn't immediately say jump into it, because if you're hesitant and, you know, if you know, at the same time, you mightn't be ready for something, you know, I mean, there's nothing intimidating or anything, but at the same time, it is something that we all need to, as people who are visually impaired or blind, you know, come to it on your own and, like, you know, become comfortable with that aspect of your physicality. And, you know, like, yeah, it takes some growth and some learning. But I would, if you are more kind of positive about entering it, I would definitely say join. A lot of people leave their cameras off, so you can even do that in the first few times, even if you feel like, you know, doing that. That should definitely not be a barrier. And yeah, I would just say go for it, but at the same time, don't push yourself too hard, in the sense of, you know, like, we all know our own boundaries, of course, but yeah, sorry, I'm kind of
Thank you.
rambling.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you how you have to be ready, but I guess people could at the same time join the National Advocacy Network and receive information rather than join the group to start with. So they could get a sense of what kind of information is coming out of the network about campaigns and activities for those that aren't ready to join the active groups. That would be one way, do you think?
Yeah, 100%.
Great. Thank you, Cameron, for answering those questions. I'm going to move on to Sarah now. Sarah, I'll ask you the same question of, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what drew you to the Advocacy Network and what you might have gotten from it?
Hello, guys. My name's Sarah Harrington. I have cerebral palsy, which in layman's terms means a grade 1 bleed on the brain. And one of the side effects of cerebral palsy that people don't know about is visual impairment. In my case, I have nystagmus strabismus, so I can see perfectly close up, but when I go to read something, it shakes and waves. So I use Apple products, and I'm currently waiting on a new iPad with a bigger screen, and the iPad is a fabulous example of universal design. I first heard about this group through a friend of mine, Shona Humphreys, who strong-armed me into coming to the advocacy group. So that was my first meeting, and then I really enjoyed it, and I basically joined to have an outlet and to keep abreast of what was going on for people with visual impairment and what was going on in terms of screen readers and assistive technology. I'm also involved with Brian Manning's Technology Club, which I find to be a great outlet and a great way of keeping abreast with what goes on in terms of assistive technology. Outside of that, I'm a part-time lecturer with the Adult Continuing Education Department in UCC, and I lecture in disability studies. Last week, I finished a module on disability and social inclusion, and I'm going to share the slides of my last lecture with Liz in a minute after this talk, which was on universal design. I think as disability groups, we tend to become siloed and focus too much on our own issues. I'm involved with the Independent Living Movement Ireland and the Disability Participation Network. So that's a little bit about me. I'm gonna stop talking now because I'm recovering from tonsillitis and I have a bit of a sore throat. Hello?
Oh, Liz, you're on mute there, just so you know.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Thank you for that. I'm sorry to hear you have a sore throat. And thank you for sharing something in particular there, what you said about the need for advocacy groups to broaden their focus so that they get to understand lots of different, the challenges of lots of different disabilities. That's certainly something we'll be looking to in our groups this year. If you'd like to give, I can go back to Cameron, or I can see if there's any questions that anyone would like to ask, if your throat is too sore to continue talking.
No, I'm all right.
Okay, so what I would like, something I would like to know from you is that with all the different areas of interest that you have, what is it that from a person who has got the lived experience of disability, what does it mean to you belonging to a network of people who have the same disability?
Well, to me, inclusion is about acknowledging the fact that disabled people have the same needs, wants and desires as any other people, and we're often seen as disabled, our disabilities first, and we have multifaceted identities that people don't see. So I want to change that through my advocacy work. I also do a bit of work for the Social and Health Education Project in their advocacy department. So advocacy is a particular passion of mine.
I can tell, Sarah, I can tell it's embedded in your life and not just in your work, by the sounds of it. Can I ask you the same question that I asked Cameron there, that if somebody was thinking of joining NCBI's local advocacy network somewhere around the country, what would you say to them?
Well, I'd say join, like you don't have to, you're not stuck to attending every month, or I normally wouldn't. As a facilitator, I'm going to have to attend every second month or every third month, but it's lovely to be able to talk to people who get it and people who understand what it's like to see somebody from a distance and not recognize their face and be reliant on their voices.
So it sounds like some similar themes to Cameron about feeling included and being amongst people that understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess as I also I'll emphasize, as I also did, that people can also join our national advocacy network and receive information only if that's their preference, if they can't, if they don't choose to attend meetings. And something you brought up there also, Sarah, when you talked about the facilitation, that the advocacy department and NCBI run training sessions for people that want to facilitate sessions, and we also run various training for all our members in our advocacy networks. We've had various media training sessions over the last year, and there'll be plenty more coming up this year for everyone, depending on campaigning skills, depending on what the skills that people want to acquire. So I'm going to pop back to Cameron. Thank you, Sarah, and ask you our final question, which is a much broader question, Cameron.
Okay.
That, in blue sky thinking, if you had the opportunity to send a message through all media channels to the public, to the government, including government ministers, and everyone out there without it having costing you anything, a message about the inclusion of people with a disability, about the benefits, about what's happening in the world for people who have a disability in communities, and about why the people with disabilities should get equal access, equal opportunity and participation, and how it will benefit all of us. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, totally. I 100% agree, and I think that we do need way more people on the disabled spectrum, whether that be visually impaired or blind, or the hard of hearing, or even people with mental disabilities like learning impairments and stuff like that, in like way broader spectrum of careers and places in power, or positions in power, I should say, and just bring a more diverse world. Like, one of the beauties of the human race that differs from us, from other species, is that we have huge diversity in terms of our experiences and things like that, that no other animal on the planet has. And I don't understand why we would deny people of all communities the ability to share their story and to learn from others. And just, if at the very least it's just learning, why would we not? And there's so many different positions that it could just do with being enriched on a global spectrum and on an Irish spectrum, with just people with broader experience and bringing different skill sets to the table. And I just 100% that people with disabilities deserve to be included on a more political and a more even pop culture, and just so many different avenues of life. It should be destigmatized, because that's the best way to destigmatize, is to expose people to people with actual vision impairments, and judge them to the same status as you would someone without a vision impairment, in terms of capability and competence at doing the job. But at the same time, let us speak, and let us give a voice to, for centuries, for millennia, I would even go as far as to say, the voiceless.
So that
would be my message.
What a wonderful message. Thank you. So the richness and diversity of the human race, I'm hearing you say, would benefit from the inclusion and participation of all people
100%,
in our world, and I certainly agree with you 100% there. Thank you, Cameron. Sarah, I'll ask you the same question, if I may. If you had the opportunity to give a single message, and there are many to give, but if you had the opportunity to give a message to through the media channels, through everywhere, to the public generally, government ministers, about the benefits of including all people in society, in particular people with disabilities, what would it be?
Basically, to come up with a definition of accessibility and remove part M of the Housing Act, because part M of the Housing Act basically it basically prevents people with disabilities from being able to access buildings to the same level as other people. And part M is in particular to do with housing, but it applies to the accessibility of any building. So my message to the government is to come up with an official definition of accessibility and remove Part M of the Housing Act and think universal design as opposed to adapting for disability, because at the end of the day we have an aging population, we have kids with buggies, we have people in wheelchairs, we have people with visual impairment. So why design with steps? Why not have ramps and drop curbs around everywhere we go? Why does it always have to be an afterthought?
So you're saying, Sarah, we need to build all this in as a natural
Yes.
course of any development, that it should be there from the beginning, not as a retrofit or an add-on design. And wouldn't that change the world? As you say, not just for people with disabilities, but parents in buggies, somebody who may even have broken their leg that week and just temporarily out of action, and anyone who finds getting people with arthritis even, you know, as they get older. So I think, and then we would really be truly giving the message to people with a disability that they are truly a part of our normal society, our everyday society.
Yes, I totally agree with you, Liz.
Well, there's some pretty big messages for anybody who's listening out there. I'm just going to go back to Lorna now, our advocacy manager. Lorna, just to see if there's any questions that we can ask you before we let you go.
There have been some questions coming in. It's Lorna here. Thanks so much, Liz. And I suppose, first of all, just to say that there's some questions that have included thanks to our speakers. So just to pass those on first and foremost before getting into the question. So I have 3 questions that have came through. So I'm not sure if anybody in particular wants to take one or the other, or wants to respond, if both want to respond. But the first one that I have here is, what's your favourite part of being a member of the local advocacy networks, and what do you like most about it, I suppose?
I have no problem answering this one. For me, my favorite part of being a member of the local advocacy network is honestly the structure. As I say, I'm new to university and it's very unstructured compared to secondary school. And it's nice that there's kind of a, even though it's only once a month, but I take some solace in the fact that there's every single Thursday of, well, not every Thursday, whatever it is, every third Thursday or something like that. For me, that there's a little Teams meeting where, you know, there's a discussion and there's conversation about how to improve the community that me and my fellow local advocacy network in the network in the Midwest are discussing for that particular meeting. So that would probably be a huge highlight for me every month, to just have that little kind of catch up. I mean, there's not really too much like personal talk, but even just like a bit of kind of conversation. I'm facing myself poorly, but I just think that that's something that it really, especially in COVID times, it's nice to just have that reliability there every month for me. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Cameron. And Sarah, do you want to answer that one as well, or will I pose a separate question to you?
As I said before, my main reason for joining the LAN was because I'm passionate about advocacy and to keep abreast of assistive technology and to have the social outlet.
Yeah, and I think that the social outlet piece has kind of came up from both there in terms of that being a really positive element of the local advocacy networks. But Sarah, there's no question in your passion around advocacy, that's for sure. The next one that came through just referenced actually as well, Liz, your comment about the training, just saying that it's great that there's training available as well. So great to have that acknowledged too. But the second question was, what do you think is the best way for advocacy networks or advocacy groups in general to try and, excuse me, make a difference in terms of addressing the issues that that are discussed at the network meetings? What's the best way that you think to try and address those issues?
I'll tackle this one first. I think that the best way to tackle the issues that are discussed in the lands, or I should call them local advocacy networks, are, you know, it's really nuanced depending on the particular topic. But I think for, you know, across the board, getting in contact with people who, you know, like the examples I cited earlier, when me and my other network attendees were discussing low floor buses being an issue, you know, we got in contact with Bus Erin. So I think, you know, it depends obviously in certain circumstances, but I think across the board, getting in touch with people in power in these certain institutions and talking to them about why this is a problem and where it could be improved on. But overall, I think that it is quite a nuanced. It just kind of depends on different issues. But yeah, sorry.
No, that's great, Cameron. Thank you so much. And you're dead right. It's about contacting the decision makers or the policy makers or whoever it is in certain circumstances. So thank you so much. And Sarah, do you have any thoughts on that one as well in terms of the best way you think that the advocacy networks can create the change and make a difference?
I would agree with Cameron, but I would also say that the best way to tackle it is to use the media to our example, particularly social media like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, because in today's society it's trialed by social media, so why not use it to make positive change as opposed to using it to vilify people or use it as a positive tool. I'm thinking particularly of some of the campaigns that the NCBI has been involved in recently, like the e-scooter campaign and the campaign about dog poo on the footpaths. They're really simple things that people wouldn't necessarily think about, but they've made people take notice and say, hang on a second, this actually has a negative impact on people's lives. It's such a small thing, but it's a huge thing when you step in it or you're in your wheelchair and it gets on your wheels.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, Sarah, about the power of social media. And I think, as you say, it's about using those platforms to share those experiences, which can also then raise awareness more generally across the general public, which is really important too, because everyone can take action, you know, and can play a part and a role in terms of the dog poo and picking it up rather than leaving it there. And you know, so it's a really, really powerful tool. And as you say, can be used to really affect positive change. So thank you so much for your answer. And the last one is a really quick one, I think, and has been touched off of slightly in terms of commitments. But the question is around: do you think it takes a lot of time to be a member of a local advocacy network? So I know, Cameron, you referenced the meetings taking place every month, but I suppose maybe looking at it in the wider sense, the meetings every month. But is there a huge time commitment outside of that, or is it really manageable and okay to engage with? So I might go to both of you on that one as well to get your experiences around. Has it been a huge time commitment?
For me, it hasn't. You know, like I was, just for an example, I was doing my exams in December, and the local advocacy meeting was set for around in my exam season, and I just bowed out of that one. And you know, if you in general have a busy schedule, I think, you know, as in when discussions are had, only some people will nominate themselves to send emails or to try and get in touch and kind of to pursue that particular issue further. So I totally think if you can, you know, give an hour a month, which you know, some people can't, which is totally understandable, but if that's all you can give, that's enough in a lot of ways. And, you know, I think one of the best things that you can do to be a part of the local advocacy network, you know, of course, sending emails and getting in touch and, you know, volunteering to do that particular role is a huge benefit to the networks. But at the end of the day, the best thing that anyone can do is attend and, you know, speak up on issues that press their day-to-day life and that affect, you know, that are inherently linked to their vision. And, you know, even if there isn't something that is particularly triggering, I suppose, them at this current moment, if someone else brings something up and, you know, they can cite another experience that they had with that particular issue, or, you know, yeah, I get what you mean, or something like that, you know, as Lorna, you just mentioned, and Sarah, you did too throughout your question, your answers, that it's the unity and the, you know, the sense of camaraderie that is a huge aspect of the LAN. And even if all you can do is attend and just share your experiences, I think you're already doing huge work in and of itself. So outside of that hour, if you can't give any more time away, then in my experience, I can't obviously speak on all lands, but in my particular one, that is perfectly acceptable, and I assume that it's the exact same no matter which one you're in. But yeah.
Thanks so much, Cameron. And yeah, that is very much the case. And Sarah, do you have any thoughts on that question in terms of the time commitment and how you find it?
No, it's not a huge time commitment at all. Like, and as I said, it's a good social outlet, particularly in COVID times where isolation has become a huge issue. I've found it really interesting, and the topics are always really diverse. So no, it's not a huge time commitment at all.
That's great. Thank you so much. I have to say I was a little bit nervous of that one and worried that people were going to say it was really long and it wouldn't be it wouldn't be what we were hoping it would be. So thank you both so much. And Liz, that's the end of my questions, but if any more come in, I'll let you know. But for now, I'm happy to hand back over to you.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you. Great questions and great answers. So there you have it, folks. Local Advocacy Networks, empowerment, engagement and inclusion. Thank you to Cameron and to Sarah for their time today, for their insights, and for their energy and for describing so well the important work that's being done with ordinary everyday people in groups around the country. If you'd like to know more about the Advocacy Networks, or you'd like to join right away, whichever, you're welcome to give us a call on 1800 911 250 and ask for the Advocacy Department, or send us a quick email at campaigns@ncbi.ie. And keep joining us this year for lots more advocacy talks. These talks are also recorded and will be up on NCBI's YouTube website. And join us, join these two fantastic people and all the other people in the networks, and bring about change in your community. Thank you today.